Players like B.B. King, Gary Moore, and David Gilmour, they all have one thing in common in their guitar playing. And that is that they all play with an excellent sense of feel. And we all agree that developing a good sense of feel will make your guitar playing sound better. But most of us would struggle to define specifically what feel actually means, and a lot of us are completely clueless on how we should practice in order to improve our sense of feel on the instrument. So, to enhance the musicality of our playing, today we're going to discuss what is feel, what does that even mean, what impact it can have on our playing, and the exercises we can use to improve our sense of feel. If you don't know who I am, I help intermediates become advanced players. We also have a community for intermediate guitarists like yourself. There is a link to the school community in the description. You can find free courses and guides and advice from people like myself and other guitarists on how to improve. So you're going to want to join as soon as possible. There is a link in the description. To understand and improve our sense of feel on the guitar, we have to understand how our human body plays an instrument. So it's commonly understood that we have 5 main senses in which we use to interpret the world around us. So we have a sense of sight, a sense of smell, a sense of sound, a sense of touch, and our sense of taste. So it's the 5 main senses that we're all commonly aware of. Now, when playing and learning any musical instrument, we heavily rely on 3 senses. That's our sense of sound, to be able to hear what we're playing, our sense of sight, to be able to see what our fingers are doing in order to create the sound, and our sense of touch in order to actually feel the instrument and play it correctly. Now, our feel on the instrument is entirely influenced by our sense of touch. Our sense of touch has the biggest impact over 2 important factors when playing the guitar, and these important factors are going to make or break your sense of feel. And they are our rhythm and dynamic control. Rhythm is our ability to connect and groove with a beat or a pulse. Our rhythmic choices influence how long or short we play any given note. So, for example, we could play a note like this and use the rhythm to hold it, or we could use the rhythm to play it short. Right? We have a choice on how we choose to play a note, and that is going to have an impact on our feel. So, for example, you could imagine if I was going up and down a scale, I could play like that and kind of hold the notes, or I could go. The rhythm that you hold notes or leave silences in between notes has an impact on the feel of your guitar playing. Now, we also have dynamics. Dynamics is our ability to control the volume of any given note, and this has a massive impact on the intensity of your playing. And you could manipulate your use of dynamics to make the same piece of music sound nice and soft and calming, or really energetic and aggressive. So you could imagine, for example, if I played a chord, I could play it nice and softly and calmly like this. There's almost a relaxing kind of vibe. However, if I increase my dynamics, you can hear the intensity kind of changes a bit within the music. Now, these are 2 very small details, right? But they have a very large impact on our playing. So essentially, feel on the guitar is how a guitarist uses their sense of touch to control and manipulate their use of rhythm and dynamic volumes on the instrument. The reason we want to focus and advance our feel on the instrument is because it will help us turn very simple ideas from sounding boring and mechanical into musical and inspiring ideas. It makes us get more out of simple, right? So, your use of rhythm is going to add an interesting element of complexity to your playing, and your use of dynamics is going to add a somewhat emotional quality by controlling the energy of your performance. So you can turn something kind of basic into something more emotional and more kind of complex by adding dynamics and rhythm. These are, again, very subtle details, but when you combine them both together, they make a world of difference. So if our sense of feel is determined by our ability to control rhythm and dynamics, let's compare what something sounds like with no attention to rhythm and dynamics versus something with more attention to detail in how we choose to play our rhythm and how we choose to control the dynamics of the volume of the instrument. So I'm just going to run up and down the A minor pentatonic scale, and we'll see how we can transform something that's simple into something that originally sounds quite mechanical and boring to something that sounds somewhat musical. So if I paid no attention to the rhythm and dynamics, I might play something that sounds like this. Now this time I'm going to put more attention to detail and care into how I'm controlling my dynamics and varying the rhythm. So when we take that in mind when we're playing the instrument, I could play something that maybe sounds like this. You can hear that there is a difference that makes quite a large impact when we pay attention to how we control our sense of dynamics and how we vary the rhythms on the phrases that we play. So, now that we have a good understanding of what feel is and why it's important, what can we do to practice and improve our sense of feel on the instrument? Well, before we start practicing, it's important to mention that developing a sense of feel is not really a logical concept in the same way that like learning a scale shape might be or practicing a chord position. So I can't really provide you with like a diagram or a PDF resource to improve your feel, because ultimately this is an intuitive process. Now this means that every guitarist is going to have to find their own kind of unique sense of feel, and that's going to make you develop your own style when you do that. This is something that you have to kind of find for yourself. This is something that I can't really give you a diagram on how to make this work. It's something you just kind of have to trial and error your way through. So remember how we talked about the 5 main senses earlier that the human body is using to interpret the world around us? Well, this is actually going to impact how we practice and develop our feel on the guitar. So now that we understand our sense of feel is greatly impacted by our sense of touch on the instrument, we're going to find our way to strengthen the reliance upon this sense in order for it to have a greater impact on our playing. Now, there are scientific studies that suggest when we eliminate one of our senses, the other 4 will start working harder in order to compensate the loss of that sense. So there are cases of people who go blind later in life, who develop a stronger, more acute sense of hearing as a result of them losing their vision. Now, because they can't interpret the world around them with vision, their hearing has to work even harder and make up for this loss, therefore making that sense become stronger. Now, we can actually do this when we practice feel to make our sense of touch become stronger and our sense of hearing become stronger. So we're going to take inspiration from this idea and do something I like to call the Stevie Wonder exercise. As mentioned in the start of the video, we play our instruments with the sense of sound, the sense of sight, and the sense of touch. You can probably see where I'm going with this by calling it the Stevie Wonder exercise. We're going to eliminate our sense of sight, and we're going to close our eyes when we play the instrument. So when we do this, we're going to be relying more heavily upon our sense of sound and our sense of touch in order to improve our feel, right? And when we rely solely upon these 2 senses more heavily by eliminating sight, they become stronger as they start having to work harder. So I want you to play a simple loop where you can improvise with a scale that you're really comfortable with. I want you to choose a scale in a position that you know just kind of off by heart. So close your eyes and observe how you can influence the rhythm and dynamic control on your instrument when noodling around and kind of practicing this scale shape, right? So I'm going to give an example of a little kind of loop that I've put together, and we'll see what I can do with the Stevie Wonder exercise. So when you try this exercise, you'll find yourself free from the limitations of playing inside the shapes. Like, seeing as you can't visualize them with your sight, you're kind of no longer limited to only playing in those box shapes. You use your sense of touch to guide you around the fretboard, and your sense of sound and hearing to guide you as well, right? This leaves you in a better position to focus more specifically on how you're playing your notes, i.e. how you're controlling your rhythm, how you're controlling your dynamics. And again, it stops you from thinking about where the actual notes are just by kind of trying to look and visualize the fretboard, right? So when we do this, we naturally start to level up our sense of feel on the instrument, because our sense of touch and our sense of hearing has to work even harder to compensate for the loss of our sight. So every student of mine that I've made do this exercise so far has actually been very surprised with the results it's delivered to their playing fairly quickly as well. They've never really tried this before. I tell them to do it, and they're surprised with how fast they kind of get quite a musical sounding result when they try closing their eyes and improvising around a scale shape. Now, I do understand this is not easy. However, it does force you to play more musically. So, having said that, let me know what your experience was like practicing this exercise in the comments. And I think some of you are going to be quite surprised with how fast your playing can sound more musical by just closing your eyes and not actually looking at the fretboard. Again, you've got to make sure that your eyes are completely closed. Don't just like look up in the sky. Try to completely close your eyes and shut out all visual information. Now, if you want to sound even more musical and become an expert level improviser on the guitar, then you're going to want to check out this video that I made for you over here. And it specifically talks about how to find melodic sounding notes when you're improvising your solos. So again, if you want to sound like a guitar god one day, you're going to want to check this video out.